You get a ball off of a metal bat right back to the pitcher at
Yes.
72 feet or whatever it is and hits him in the face, that's a major problem.
Hey, everyone. Thank you again for coming back to another edition, another recording of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm with Brianna Ludwig. I'm Jordan Skop. We will bring on our guest very soon, and we'll discuss all things. Guest we bring on our show, bring us the questions. So we're really excited about that part of the show. That's the major part of the recording. Before we bring on our guest, a little recap of Foul Ball Safety Now. Been at it now for 6 years, working with a journalist by the name of Brendan for 6 years. And everything we've done, we've tried to put on the website so people can see it at foulballsafetynow.com. Brianna Ludwig's been with me for about a year, and she's been part of these recordings with me for the last few months. So it's very exciting that we're launching this conversation. And once people start listening to this conversation, which you're listening to now, will hopefully be a bigger network. Before I turn the tables and bring on our guest, just some observations. We're in the middle of October right now. We're in the middle of the baseball playoffs. Today is Saturday, and last night the Dodgers won the game. The Brewers are out. The Dodgers are going to the World Series. Now it's up to the last two games. It's 3-2 to Seattle, but going back to Toronto for the Sunday game, if necessary, Monday game, to decide who's going to be the last two teams standing for the World Series. But a couple of things to address in the news. Still, I'm talking about what happened in Seattle a week and a half ago when the broken bat went into the seats and where national TV aired Jorge Polanco was having a great game. He had hit 2 home runs, and then he broke his bat on one of the next at bats for an infield single. We didn't know until till they had gone to commercial that the broken bat had actually sailed over the netting and into the seats. And you heard the announcer as they were showing this video of this broken bat coming into the seats, maybe 5 minutes after the actual broken bat incident. You hear the announcer saying over the video, "Yikes! Look out!" So, was anyone hurt from that incident? We hope not. Well, anyone who was in that section could have self-reported it. Brianna and I have put out on Foul Ball Safety Now injuries we discovered so far in 2025. Many of these injuries are self-reported, but nobody we were able to find on social media had self-reported that broken bat that maybe nearly hit them, which or potentially could have come in like a spear and pierced your heart. So this is stuff that is happening, and you even have announcers talking, "Yikes, look out." But why in 2025, business as usual would allow a bat to come in like a boomerang, just like that? But at least we have a conversation starter. And that's what these recordings are all about. It's to reach out and get people to become aware, possibly become upset, because we're creating an epiphany of an awareness, maybe from people's prior experiences. Maybe they didn't know about this, and possibly an epiphany of outrage to the extent where people may actually get upset. But that's what we do. All we can do is demonstrate important information that people may have missed at Foul Ball Safety Now or throughout their own baseball experiences throughout the years. People will see Exhibit A, the 5-minute video from 2019, an horrific video, which really demonstrated if you were sitting past end of dugouts, you had no business sitting there. And why in 2025, 6.5 years after that video aired, are there still 30 to 40 professional cities that we know of with still no netting past end of dugouts? All worthy of an interesting discussion. So we're going to get to that as well. We're going to keep following up on seeing what the teams are doing or not doing. Improvements are good, but we're looking for solutions. People are getting hurt inside ballparks and outside ballparks. And we're going to be addressing in the next week or two another follow-up to the Queens College situation. So people can go to the website, Foul Ball Safety Now, click on Queens College investigation. We've written 3 letters to the administration. On the first letter we wrote, we did get a response back from the athletic director, who got word from the college president to get back with us, but that was back in May. Our 3rd letter was in September. A student athlete had contacted me because they're concerned about them potentially hitting balls just outside the ballpark where it may be a college ballpark where the sides are low. If people Google Earth Queens College, you'll notice there's an elementary school on the campus or right next to the playing field. So these young athletes, student athletes, are worried that there's going to be a kid that gets a line drive or a foul ball over the side. Similar to what happened in Modesto, California, where maybe in a 3-hour period, an affiliate of the Seattle Mariners, the Modesto club, hosting a game, potentially 10 or 15 balls within a 3-hour period could land outside the ballpark prior to the game, during the game, prior to the game, during batting practice. This woman was outside waiting to go in, and balls fly outside. And yes, they hit the pavement and hit windows. In this case, it hit her head. We got contacted by a lawyer. So I can only imagine what it's like to be a college baseball player and a young adult in the college or the professional leagues, 169 professional ballparks, in addition to the 30 major league teams, where balls potentially are flying outside regularly between a 2 or 3-hour period and hitting pavement and windows and, unfortunately, people. Happened to me in a group 20 years ago in Brooklyn, New York, when we were outside the ballpark, long before I got involved with foul ball safety now. We were in Coney Island, Brooklyn on Surf Avenue and just hanging out, and the ball flew over the side and hit a young person we were with right in the forearm and left a big mark on his arm. You could see the stitches of the baseball, and it hurt. It could have been his head. So we're lucky that that kid we were with that day got away with just a bruise. So a lot of stories, a lot of interviews, and we want to keep everyone up on what's happening in foul ball safety now. And these conversations introduce people to the matter. Brianna, how are you today?
Doing good. I'm happy to be here and excited to get the conversation started and shed some light on this important issue. So, without further ado, I will bring on our guest for today. He is a stuntman and entrepreneur, Trevor Overton. How are you, Trevor?
Doing well, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the time.
Hi, Trevor. Really appreciate you being here today. Are you ready to go with some questions?
Absolutely, yeah. And I coming at this from a little bit of a different angle from an injury and sports perspective. I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on childhood sports, and I guess specifically the pressure to go from rec to select. And I'll give you an example to, I guess, better depict my question. I live here in the Dallas Fort Worth area, obviously very populated, and I have a daughter that plays softball, select softball, and maintained playing rec through, past 12U essentially. They were not able to field a team of 14U girls at the rec level to put together a softball team. And I saw it firsthand. Like everybody's like, "Oh, we got to go select this, that, and the other." And I'm curious to get your thoughts on the psychological injury, if you will, of that, and how also that changes the game to a certain extent, as far as the levels of select and how it kind of becomes paid rec ball at the C level, and just yeah, interested to get your thoughts on how that impacts children and even their interest in sports and wanting to move forward in development.
So, in essence, your daughter is part of what type of group? Because I'm not sure about all these particular groups. Are we talking on the collegiate level? Where what
No,
do we
so
s
she's currently select. She
what is
plays
actually select?
or
I'm not sure.
club or I guess
Got
not city local ball, travel ball, I think is what some people call it.
got it. She was kinda recruited because she stands out amongst her peers, and she's part of a group, and you guys travel, and the level of play may be higher in that age group. What age group is she in?
She's 15U or 16U now, I guess.
15 or 16 years old
Yeah,
groups.
correct.
Okay. So clearly a student athlete who told me from Queens College, and he wanted to remain anonymous. He said, "I can't speak with you, Jordan." He says, "If I tell you how I really feel and how we feel," he said to me, quote, "I'm worried about 20 years in the future, my unborn child will be blackballed because I'll be labeled as a troublemaker." I said, "Well, that's kind of deep." I said, "The bottom line is you feel anxiety, and our fourth letter going out to Queens College, we're going to copy the NCAA. We're going to get them involved because it clearly states in the NCAA rules, regulations, guidelines, whatever, that student athletes' psychological well-being needs to be adhered to. And I think this is an example of it's not being adhered to because Queens College athletes or other college athletes all over the place are being in a position to play the game and potentially do some serious damage to the spectators, whether they're inside the ballpark or outside the ballpark. So that's legit. I'm not sure about the scenario on where your daughter, what type of fields they're playing on. Are these softballs reaching the parking lot? That's on the outside of the field. Are those balls, which we know are hard balls, for people from Europe, hearing the word softball, they may think it's a sponge ball. But for the people who live in the United States who follow the game all the time, I think most people know that softballs can really hurt and do some serious damage. So, in regards to that, is there a conversation about that going on amongst the teenagers? Do they voice their concerns? Or is that flow of conversation not encouraged or not nurtured?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on the point from the psychological perspective. I think a lot of people just view it as like, oh, well, that feeling or whatever, that's just part of sports and this, that, and the other. But from,
Mhm.
the specifically safety of the game perspective, I think the hot topic in softball right now at the levels that my daughter has gone through and is currently at is face masks.
Right.
Yes, you do have the balls that go into the parking lot. You've got,
Mhm.
the foul balls that you got a group of 6 fields together and,
Mhm.
somebody's yelling because they got a home run over on field B and you're playing at
Mhm.
C. Well, they don't hear you
I know.
yell foul ball. And, that's
Mhm.
definitely issues that need to
Mhm.
be addressed. But,
Mhm.
you've got rules in place where girls are supposed to be wearing masks and this, that, and
Mhm.
the other. And I've seen it firsthand. You get a ball off of a metal bat right back to the pitcher at,
Yes.
72 feet or whatever it is and hits them in the face. That's a major problem. And
Right, it's even closer than that. I think the pitching mound in softball in Major League Baseball, it's 60 feet, 6
yeah,
inches,
sorry.
so it would be either 60 feet or maybe even a drop closer or more than a few feet closer. I'm not really sure, but either way, they are wearing masks, and of course, it must be, as a parent, somebody, like yourself who kind of is aware of these are sort of what goes along with the day-to-day of the game, but I think clearly locally, each field deserves and is worthy of a conversation. And I think once that happens, honestly, certain things can be addressed immediately. I got a call from somebody from a place called White House, Tennessee. There actually is a city called White House, Tennessee. A booster contacted me, wrote me a nice letter, and asked me for funding. And I wrote him back. He said, "We can't have soccer games going on simultaneously while baseball games are going on because the baseballs are going onto the soccer field." And at least people
Exactly.
are thinking about it and discussing it. I said, "Your situation is not so unique," because I was already on the Queens College investigation, and I learned about the situation in Modesto, California. People going to my website at Foul Ball Safety Now. Unfortunately, a few months ago, I got contacted by a lawyer who needed to speak with us before their upcoming trial. In July of 2023, a woman was outside the ballpark waiting to go in, and a ball struck her in the head, and she can't work anymore. We learned that case was settled 2 years after she was struck. We wrote 3 letters this past summer to the Modesto newspaper because why weren't the local fans notified from July of 2023 when the woman was struck outside the ballpark that maybe 10 or 15 balls are raining on the pavement during a 3-hour period while games are going on, before, during the games, batting practice where she was waiting to go inside, and she got struck. You're one of 1,000 fields in America, potentially, where your children are playing that deserves or is worthy of a conversation. I've been tracking, trying to keep up with the 30 major league ballparks, trying to keep up with the 169 other professional ballparks. There's 120 affiliates from the 30 major league clubs, so there's 4 per major league club. So that's 120, and then there's another 49 teams. They're called the Major League Partner League teams. And there's still 30 to 40 of those cities that still don't have netting past end of dugouts. And once people see Exhibit A from 2019, it clearly demonstrates that no human being really should be able to be sitting in some of these sections past end of dugouts. It doesn't make any sense. But all we can do is put it on the table, and people then can finally have a real conversation about it. I get your dilemma on the fields where there's 4 or 5 games going on, and whoever designed that park, I think in Central Park, New York City, they have softball fields where I used to play, where my back is 4 feet behind. I'm playing center field for the team I'm playing for, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's involved in another game. I'm 3 feet next to him. He's looking
Right.
this way, and I'm looking that way. I think it sounds like they have that going on. So you're trying to warn the other person, "A ball's over my head, and it might hit your head." So, yeah, I can only imagine, and maybe, they have to address this issue, to some extent, that maybe the people whose backs are turned have to wear some sort of helmet, cap of some kind to prevent their vitals. But again, I'd rather have this conversation rather than not. Let's at least know what we're dealing with, and there could be some extra steps and extra precautions on all scenarios. Maybe those parks aren't updated to the fact of, conversation has led us to believe that unfortunately these fields shouldn't operate anymore. We had 2 lawyers on one of our last recordings who were sharing with us, "Hey, Jordan, in LA at this high school field, the nets are really, really, really high." I'm like, "Okay." He says, "But balls are still getting over the net." I was like, "Well," I said, "well, then Major League Baseball should get their house in order. And once they do, they should have millions of dollars available to address every high school, college, and other professional field. And let's all figure it out together. It won't cost Major League Baseball more than a few $1,000,000 a year to really deal with being sort of a go-to resource. But we can't go to them until they clean their house up. We're in healthy aggression era of foul ball safety now. We want MLB to finally address this issue, get everyone caught up on the history of all this. There are solutions out there, Trevor, and that's where I want to go with you, all locally. And when people say to me, "How can we address this issue?" We can all address one field at a time and finally decide if business as usual is appropriate, or is it not appropriate, or is there some ground in between. But finally have the conversation is what I really want you guys to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, that kind of brings me to some of the solutions. You've got people that keep score at even the rec games and whatnot. And you've got a keypad that you operate the scoreboard off of. You could simply add in a siren that has a foul ball, button, and the person that keeps score doesn't have to be super loud, but enough to grab
Sure.
people's attention. And there are simple solutions. And to your point about the MLB kind of leading the charge, I 100% agree. I mean, they've got to fix it. It starts with them and setting the example, but
Sure.
I think taking it a step further, and even outside of the MLB, like I mentioned, I'm in the DFW area. The Mavericks just recently
Right.
opened a baseball field, and the Rangers have done that as well. I've seen plenty of professional organizations that have done that with baseball, basketball, whatever it may be. They could repurpose those funds to obviously build, if they are going to put in new fields, which we need as many fields as we can. Sports are great for kids and adults
Sure.
and everybody alike, but
Sure.
the safety issue comes into play. The more fields we have, the more safety risk you're putting people at. And I think if they use the funds that they're using to open up fields and put those into local fields, minor league fields, whatever it may be, starting with themselves to put in some of these nets, sirens, whatever the solution ends up being, then
There's solutions because it's just the three of us talking, and you had a great idea. Japan is practicing some of that culture. They have team attendants on every aisle when balls make their way over the net. They have even silly animation, which maybe people think is distasteful, but it gets the attention of the fan, where they show like a fan getting hit by a ball and getting wheeled off by an ambulance. But they're just trying to put it in front of you that this is a possibility, so pay attention. Or it's not a free ride at the game. Now, baseball, even when there are signs in front of you, and even when there are announcements, maybe all of this should have been known prior, meaning we're not superheroes, Trevor, the last I checked. We're not action figures. So when we see a sign, even by our cup holder on the very seat in front of us, that says, be careful of foul ball, we're not really able to get out of the way. And I think we should have been educated about this not at the game, but before. Hunter Windelstadt, the umpire, who hasn't been back to work in maybe 5 or 6 months, he was staring without blinking. He was 90 feet away from home to first and another 10 feet behind, so maybe 100 feet away, and he got one right in the middle of his head, and he hasn't been back to work.
right.
Line drive, right? And how about those people exposed 100 feet to the right or left in some of these places, the 30 to 40 cities that still have no netting past end of dugouts? They don't have a chance. I don't care if the sign is telling you every minute, be careful, be careful, be careful. I think
Absolutely.
we should have had the opportunity to be enlightened and informed about all of this. And I think years and years and years ago, agencies would have gotten the missing memo that they should have gotten, similar to the fans, and they would have responded, and we would have had these conversations. But this information wasn't not required to be delivered to the fan base. And that's why when these families are disrupted forever, the people that Brendan and I are meeting, we know they weren't properly informed because Monty wouldn't have brought his daughter Alexis to the game if he had any idea. This is Alexis who we met. Unfortunately, she's a teenager now and she's forgetting things from her ball that hit her in the head. Her first game wasn't a great game. She got smashed by a ball. And we've met other people who are adults who were children, and they have similar stories. There's physical issues, psychological issues long term. So we're meeting these people firsthand. I do believe that baseball has to fix their house, and reconciliation is part of it. And if we can say in the future, you remember the dark ages back in 2025 when business as usual was conducted a certain way. I think enough people, once they learn about maybe information they may have missed, may come to that conclusion. But that's what we do at Foul Ball Safety Now. We find out things and we want to share them. And if it means mud on your face because we found out, well, so be it. Let's just see how much mud there is. And let's finally get past it and try to make a place where we can say in 2035, you remember where nobody knew much about this issue back when. And we hope so. We hope it becomes that, but we're not there yet. Brianna and I are discovering all these self-reported injuries at major league ballparks in 2025, and people are saying things, I'm never going to another game again. And this is with supposed upgrades. Well, we know of a lot of things there, Trevor.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jordan, do you think it's to the point that we've seen enough pushback from, MLB and really at every level that it's a public safety concern and we start going to, whether it's local municipalities or counties or whatever, and there's a law in place that says, hey, there's 100,000 people that go to this stadium or 60,000 people or college stadium, whatever size it may be. These risks, these injuries are not being known to people, and they're subsequently putting themselves subject to those exact same risks because that information is not being put in front of them. Are there that many self-reported injuries that it's worth going above their head, for lack of a better term?
Yes, I mean, NBC did a study in 2019, And we have some ideas that there's been some cases involved, that there's a lot of discovery of injuries that the teams are not required to share on an annual basis. So the NBC study from 2019, people can see it at Foul Ball Safety now, the NBC study from 2012 to 2019, it implied maybe 5,000 people reported to first aid between 2012 and 2019, mostly related to baseball injuries. Now, that doesn't mean they were all concussions or people who've been blinded, and that's not even including the 5 times as many more games maybe in that time period between 2012 and 2019 at the other professional levels. Now we know there's at least 5 times as many more games because maybe there were a few less teams then, but either way, 4 to 5 times as many more games in other professional leagues. Just how I can only imagine how many people we just never learned about that may have been seriously injured. Rick, a gentleman who was blinded at a Cardinals game, and a lawyer of mine introduced me to her girlfriend who was blinded as a teenager in New York at Chase Stadium when she was 14. We interviewed her as well. And we interviewed Erwin Goldblum. Unfortunately, his wife was killed at the Dodger game in 2018, and that was on the Loge level, and it took the Dodgers a year to raise their nets vertically, and people in that seat or in that row didn't even know about it or may have not found out about it till the following spring. So that is also raises a question, why weren't these people notified that somebody just died in the seat that you're sitting in on the next day or in the same row? All kinds of questions should be raised about disclosure. There's no requirements. The teams have not done any of that. That would have led to more people asking more questions, I think, and that just hasn't happened. But yes, I would love to be getting a call from you because you're telling me that our community is doing certain steps to make sure there's more transparency and steps towards safety. Glad to be, part of those conversations with you.
Yeah, well, it even extends further than foul balls. I mean, I don't know, and if you said this, I apologize if I missed it,
Sure.
but was that report just for foul balls, or did that include other injuries? You got, for example, at the Rangers game, I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago now, there was somebody that fell off of a second-story balcony and ended up passing away. I mean,
That was,
that
Josh Hamilton tried to chuck a ball like 10 years ago. It was in California, right? Something like that?
okay. Yeah, well, there was one that happened at or at, the ballpark in
At the
Arlington as well.
Arlington?
It was more recent.
Nice.
I'll look it up and send it to you. I apologize, I should have
Sure.
had that reference, but, I mean, that's a perfect example right there. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody passes away and you don't even hear about it, and you're in the baseball field looking into injuries every single day, and a net below that could have.
Absolutely. We there's Exhibit A1 on the website, which I'm always anxious to share. That's the 538 publication that Brendan and I took a look at. There was a report back in 2019, and it demonstrated by this publication called 538 where the balls go and how often. And we took the average per balls per game, 53 foul balls per game. That was in 2019. We cut it in half, even less than half, to 25. And if you multiply 14,000 games times 25, that's 350,000 foul balls. And we can all put 2 and 2 together once we look at that Exhibit A1 report and want to then question out how many of them were going in those sections and how fast were they going. Statcast has been around for 10 years or so. For the last decade or two, they've been tracking everything. We know where they go, how fast they leave the bat. I would hope the fan base will be demanding just to know how bad it was. And why didn't you tell us that X amount of these balls were coming at 100? Based on that ESPN video from 2019, those weren't the only line drives going in at those speeds. Those are the ones the cameras picked up where children got hit, but there could have been 10 times as many more or 100 times as many more going at warp speed past people's ears, and people don't leave. Or maybe that would be the last time they sit in that section, but that's not the way they should be alerted. It should be alerted at home.
The only entity that has all the information of just how often this is happening and where the balls are going is the MLB, and they're not able to share that information, and they track every single ball. They know how fast the exit velocity is, and they're not required currently to report any fan injuries. And even when these studies happen, it's with a limited number of teams or a limited number of people from within the baseball industrial complex that are willing to participate in the studies. So a lot of it is filling in the gaps, using averages. And that's what's been so beneficial about social media to bring this issue to life because, maybe 30 years ago, if this had happened to someone, if a journalist didn't do an expose or didn't run a story on the injured victim, then that story isn't really making it out past their, circle of family and friends. And nowadays, everybody's always recording and taking videos. And when they see something happen, or even when it happens to them, they're sharing it online publicly, and the algorithm is allowing it to be discovered. So what Jordan was mentioning earlier, the report that we have on foulballsafetynow.com of the 2025 injuries is up, and we are still continuing to find things. I mean, I'll go back every couple weeks and I'll find new self-reported injuries of people posting their black and blue marks or saying that they're never going to a game again. And then they're finding community online, and in the comments section of these videos, people are sharing that it's also happened to them or that they've seen it happen at a game. And it's very mind-blowing. So if you go to foulballsafetynow.com, that report is up, and you can see just how much carnage has gone on.
It's ironic that the teams require or that the MLB requires teams to report their injuries, but they don't report the injuries that happen within the stadiums that they play in.
The way the NBC study came about was, it wasn't the teams themselves, it was 4 out of 30 teams, first aid independent contractors. So you may go to a game in Arlington or Houston, and you'll see a couple of guys, on one side of the field, a couple of guys on another side of the field. They're there if there's a slip and fall, or they're there if somebody gets hit by a foul ball, 'cause
Yeah.
obviously it's a big community for 3 hours, so they gotta be some first aids. So 4 were luckily able to share their data. I'm sure MLB didn't like it because it's a major study, and if you extrapolated, data that may have not come from the other 26 teams, you could hypothesize and say maybe 5,000 people. But I don't want to exaggerate or inflate. There's no reason to do so. There's enough information. Again, people should look at Exhibit A1, the 538 report from 2019 that Brendan and I incorporated our own research and put it out something in 2025. People can really connect the dots, and I think it would warrant all of us to just ask MLB, please tell us exactly how many balls came in these speeds into these sections. It's better we know than just hypothesize or whatever. But there's enough there. It tells you the directions ball go and the percentages of the balls of the 53 foul balls per game on, more go this section, more go that section. Some of them come at high speeds. So I encourage everyone to look at foulballsafetynow.com, look at Exhibit A1, and figure out your own experience or ask us more questions. Anything else for us, Trevor? Happy to keep going. We're just getting in the middle of things.
Yeah, no, I think that's all I've got. I appreciate you guys having me
Okay.
on again.
Oh, terrific. No, this was great. We really appreciate it. And we're around if you want to reach back to us, give us any updates on what you guys are doing locally or how we may be able to help.
Yeah, Trevor, what do you hope to see change in professional baseball for the future generations who will be attending games and taking their kids to games?
Well, I think we've touched on the education topic, over and over again, and I think statistically they say that, going back to Jordan's point about signs and how you can see a sign, and most people see those white signs walking into parks and they're talking to somebody, and they don't even think twice about it, even if they do read it. It takes people 7 times to realize or for it to sink in what they're reading, or whether it's a billboard or an advertisement or something along those lines, and that time shrinks if you do that in varying ways. And we touched on Japan, I think it was, that Jordan said was doing some different videos and stuff like that. If we could get the MLB to at least release some of these statistics to have some more exact numbers, maybe you could do that per section. If you're in section 111 right behind the dugout, you could have a notification of some kind, even on the MLB app. You could, they know where their tickets are going to be and where they're sitting. Say, hey, risk of foul ball, risk of broken bat, and at X mile per hour, be cautious when you're in your seats, kind of thing. I mean, again, there's a plethora of different solutions that can be done and really can be implemented pretty easily with technology in today's world that I think we could see changed quite quickly. So I think that would be, like Jordan said, MLB setting the example and starting there and trickling down to all levels of sports.
That would be nice. I welcome that concept becoming reality. We all do, and I'm dedicated to foul ball safety now. I think the education needs to happen before we get to the ballpark, and once we learn exactly what can happen at the ballpark before we get to the ballpark, well, hopefully influencers in within agencies and influencers within people who are the biggest baseball fan of that family will have a conversation with their own family, and things will start and conversations will begin and we'll address solutions. So I think this is really a good time for this conversation, and I'm glad you've been part of this with us today, Trevor, and really happy that people are going to be listening to the Foul Ball Safety Now's updates and these recordings. And please tune in again. And we're excited to keep this conversation going. So thank you again, and we'll do it again soon.